Hi everybody, welcome back to the Walter Schaub Show. I just want to say thank you to everyone that listened. I didn't think anybody would, and there were definitely more than no one. So that was I'm really touched by it, and let's continue talking about these topics. So today I want to talk about free speech in general and how it relates to specific and how I feel about those in general. So let's talk about the American concept of free speech, because it's a very important distinction than the rest of the world has. The American Constitution does a unique thing where it limits the power of the state and assumes rights that you have independent of the state. So the Constitution doesn't say you have the right to say whatever you want. You have the right to free speech. It says no, Congress may make no laws limiting speech. And that's a very powerful idea. The fact that you do not derive your rights from the state. Now, a lot of people talk about American exceptionalism. Don't believe Americans are terribly exceptional. I don't think that they're different to people in the rest of the world. I don't think that they're necessarily smarter. I don't think their education system is better. If anything, it's worse. What is exceptional about America is freedom. And the only way you can have freedom is by having free speech. If you can be locked up for saying something, then you have no rights. And to whatever extent that those rights you have is, I think, what has created the greatest, most powerful country in the world. Free speech acknowledges that people make mistakes. Free speech acknowledges that people can get things wrong. But free speech also creates the situation where it creates the culture and the environment where everybody can thrive, where people can have ideas, where people feel safe to express themselves. And that is the amazing, power of free speech. And over the last few years, we have, seen free speech come under attack. We've seen, the state really trying to push back on what they would call hate speech or misinformation or disinformation. The claim is that it's either dangerous for national security or God forbid, somebody will not know the right information. And the pitfalls have become so clear of these ideas, besides the fact they're illegal. It's important to discuss each one. So, first of all, I want to say that I am a free speech absolutist. Meaning, I believe that you should be able to say any idea you want. You cannot be held criminally liable for that. And I just want to become clear, what I mean by that, because I don't want anybody to have any misunderstandings. So let's just put it as clearly as this. If I would have the right and the ability to block Ayatollah Khomeini's Twitter account, I would not do it. And even if it's not governed by free speech laws, I would not do it. Because I believe that limiting the free expression of ideas is far more dangerous than anything that he can do. And once you believe the state has the power to limit free speech, then you are creating a situation where the state can define what is hate speech, what is not good speech, what is good speech, like you have in Britain, where you can be arrested for social media posts. And so I would rather have dangers of allowing free speech, even the reported dangers. Even if the government and the state is right and all those dangers are real, I would still prefer free speech, and I would go with dangers. Because the purpose of life is not to be safe. The purpose of life is to go and accomplish and do. Something that made me mad during COVID was when people were like, stay safe, stay safe. No. Staying safe is not the goal. Living your life is the goal. Moving on is the goal. Fear is not something that or to be able to stop you from doing things. So I am not, so even if you would convince me that all the pitfalls and all the danger that exists from free speech, the famous limitation that everybody knows about from free speech is the case that took place in 1919, Schneck versus the United States. And this is where the famous line came from: you can't shout fire in a crowded cinema. And everybody always quotes this, and it's the most maddening thing, because nobody knows the case, and nobody's talking about the actual case. The case was, during World War I, anti-war activists were distributing anti-war material, and Woodrow Wilson, one of the worst presidents we ever had, and that's saying something. Woodrow Wilson, who was an authoritarian and a tyrant in many ways, created these espionage laws, which he prosecuted people for disseminating free speech. And so the idea that you can't shout fire in a cinema the way liberals quote it today, the way progressives quote it today, is ridiculous. their whole one of their only the only redeeming quality among progressives, what used to be until they became a bunch of warmongers under Trump, but the only redeeming quality of them was their strong anti-war stance. That was the and now they seem to be embracing a legal theory that would challenge that. The other thing is, it's important to point out, is that ruling was overturned because it was unconstitutional. It is not illegal to shout fire in a crowded cinema. In Brandon v. Ohio, what happened was they said that that you cannot, in 1969, they said that the only time it's illegal is when you are calling for direct breaking of the law. So you're saying, go do this exact act. Go murder this person. Go kill this person. Go steal from that person. Now I want to get into the fears that are promoted about the dangers of free speech. One of them is misinformation and disinformation. Under that goes conspiracy theories. So someone like Gavin Newsom, the worst governor California's ever seen, he will get up during these California the wildfires, and he'll say something like this: well, one of the things we have to combat is all this misinformation and disinformation, conspiracy theories about what went on. And his claim is that somehow these are dangerous. So let's talk about misinformation and disinformation. How does misinformation and disinformation spread? So I consider myself somewhat immune to many conspiracy theories, and the reason is because most conspiracy theories start something like this. They say, well, the government can't be that incompetent, so it must be some nefarious action is going on. And I do not put nefarious action past the government. They're certainly nefarious. But the idea that there is a depth to their incompetence is something that we have not seen yet. Politicians seem to have the ability to surprise us in this way, where they are always able to take their incompetence to the next level. And so it's never surprising to me when you see something like, when you're like, oh yeah, they forgot to fill the reservoirs, and the actual story, and oh yeah, they forgot to turn off the power. Like they didn't do forestry. So yeah, they were completely incompetent, and that's what caused the LA fires. But if government wanted to yield a powerful weapon against misinformation and disinformation, so that weapon would be competence and transparency. If the state was transparent, then there would not be misinformation and disinformation and conspiracy theories. For example, when Fauci got up and said in front of Ron Paul, we were never doing gain-of-function research. And then Rand Paul discovered the data, and he's like, well, that's not called gain-of-function research. And then it came out that they funded the Wuhan lab. And so if you want, and during that whole time, anybody that was saying that it came out of the lab was considered a conspiracy theorist. And then that came out to be true. So if you're silencing people, so then people are automatically going to say, hey, what's going on over here? And if you're desperately incompetent and you can't do the basic functions of government, so then there's going to be conspiracy theories. Like, I don't believe necessarily any of the conspiracy theories about the Trump assassination. But I will tell you, when the head of the Secret Service got up and said, well, we were nervous to put someone on that roof because it was a slightly sloped roof. So that gives rise to conspiracy theories. And when there's no explanation of who he was and what he did, that gives rise. And the state has a very easy way of getting out of this problem. Just tell us what happened. Just be forthright, and people will not believe disinformation and misinformation. So that's definitely like the lack of they only have themselves to blame for these things. The other thing is that like misinformation and disinformation is just often coded for things that the government does not like. They decided, and another great example is COVID, and we'll be doing other episodes on COVID and the destruction that was. But if you look at a lot of the things that they called misinformation, disinformation, masks working, the vaccine side effects, the inability to stop transmission, that was true. So that is the most dangerous part about the so-called misinformation, disinformation, and conspiracy theory industry. They end up quashing true stories. They end up with true information. I had a line during COVID that a conspiracy theory was just a pre-release of facts. Like this is like you're getting them early. Fine. So that's my thoughts on the limits of government in terms of free speech and why free speech is fantastic. So I want to get into something, some hypocrisy that I've noticed. So over the last 4 years, conservatives have been very strong on the issue of free speech, and they have been, and that makes sense because a lot of conservative speech has been quashed. So that would make people want to fight for free speech. But you do not believe in free speech if you think that speech you don't like should be quashed. So let's take, the war in Gaza, and this is really what inspired this podcast. Many years ago, the ACLU defended the right of neo-Nazis to march in Philadelphia. The reason they did this was because if you don't allow that, so then you are again conceding the point that you don't really believe in free speech. And I believe the same thing is true for anti-Semitic and anti-Israel protests and expressing ideas. I don't think that it is a good idea, I think it is a terrible idea, and I think it is highly hypocritical to say that you believe in free speech, but the speech of anti-Semitic, anti-Israel protesters should be silenced. Like it means you have no principles. I'm not saying that it's appropriate for these people to smash property and take over campuses. I'm not getting involved in that. I'm not getting involved in that at all. But the idea that you could say that someone should be cancelled for expressing support for Hamas or supporting Palestinians, those views are, many of them, abhorrent, and a lot of them are anti-Semitic. And if you don't defend the speech of people that you find abhorrent and disgraceful, then you don't believe in free speech, because that is the power of free speech. And silencing ideas only makes them more popular. The only way to defeat bad ideas is with good ideas. So, something I really like on Twitter now is community notes. Community notes is the best type of fact checking, where people are able to present other sources of information, and the reader can make their own decision. If anti-Semitism is a bad idea, and it is, and if Hamas is a bad idea, and it is, then it can be defeated in the open. Trying to quash and silence people never works. It works. That is always the tactic of authoritarian regimes. So if you believe that you should quash that speech, what you're saying is, I want to be authoritarian, but only on the ideas I don't like. And that is always where things go downhill. So if you believe in free speech, you must defend everybody's speech. As a side topic, I don't like cancel culture at all. I think that people say stupid things. They say stupid things a lot. And I don't believe that just because we now have a lot on the internet, so if someone says something dumb, we should cancel them. I not even sure, I have very mixed feelings about even canceling someone that says something awful. I'm not sure if someone said something anti-Semitic and they got recorded doing it. I'm not sure I'd want that person to lose their job. I don't want the banner of you did something so evil, you said something bad about the Jews, and they're such a weak class of people that we have to ruin your life. That to me is not a winning strategy, and I also don't know if I agree with it. I don't know if somebody messes up or says something stupid or does something bad, they should lose everything. And definitely write in the comments if you disagree. But I don't see that. Now, what inspired me to talk about this topic was a case that came out from Harvard yesterday. Give me 1 second. Harvard, had a very hard time with pro-Hamas protests, and so they were sued for not protecting their students. And as part of the lawsuit, they're going to make Jews a protected class on campus, and there's going to be special trainings around anti-Semitism, and they're going to adopt some sort of definition of anti-Semitism. And I think this is so classically the wrong approach. I don't believe in protected classes. I believe in treating everybody fairly. I don't think Jews should get any special protection. And I don't think that remedying a bad situation with being authoritarian is the right idea. Now, obviously, a campus does not have necessarily limited by the Constitution. They're a private entity, although they do receive a lot of funding from the state. But I will say that, look how silly their approach was. What happened on college campuses? You had these huge encampments, illegal encampments. There was no permission to be there, no plumbing. These like tent cities with outside agitators. You had anti-Israel protesters blocking students from going to class. Harvard doesn't need to have a sensitivity training about Jews. Harvard needs to figure out how to run a campus. Harvard never, I was laughing when Claudine Gay was talking about, like, she was talking like me, well, we don't want to limit free speech. And like, she definitely doesn't believe in free speech. But they've gone so backwards, they're like, whoa, everybody needs to be protected. No, just make some very simple rules. You cannot create an encampment on the lawn, and you cannot block another student from going to class. And if you do either of those, you will be arrested and expelled. The remedy is so easy. I want to touch on a more controversial example of that. Let's say, you have anti-discrimination laws in America, and whether they were important, whether they needed or not, let's just talk about the situation that it was remedying. So you had Jim Crow in the South, which said, African Americans cannot sit at the same table as white people. So the remedy was national laws to say that you cannot discriminate. Now those national laws were federal laws, which were definitely well-intended and might have been needed at the time, are exactly the opposite remedy of what you needed. And it's actually quite dangerous, because anti-discrimination laws, and look, there were never more signs about discriminating against Jews. They used to say no dogs and no Jews outside golf resorts, right? So I understand that, it's not only about, it's everybody's affected by these type of discrimination. But what I'm saying is, what was the remedy there? Why did those states have those discriminatory laws? Because if they had not had them, then the free market would have won. And whether those anti-discrimination laws were needed or not needed, they are unconstitutional, because they do limit the rights of a person to discriminate, which is a legal right. I don't let anybody come into my house. So you say it's different, like if it's a public business. Property rights are property rights, whether they're private or not. But I think now, I in a way, like, I would almost want to allow discrimination. Like, if there's a store that doesn't like Jews, but they can't discriminate, so they'll sell me, I don't want to buy from them. I have options. Just tell me you don't like Jews, and I'll buy from somewhere else. And then you won't be limiting the rights of everyone in order to stop discrimination. There will always be discrimination. There will always be nasty people out there. We do not limit the rights that have made this country the greatest country in the world, in order to make everybody feel good all the time. The state ought to protect people's property and safety, as they have a monopoly on violence. But that's it. They should not. They should not limit right. Once you are putting your finger on the thumb on the scale, then you own the situation. And that is basically what Mark Zuckerberg recently came out with when he said, they tried limiting free speech. I mean, he didn't say that. He said they tried to do moderation, and it didn't work, because it's just an impossible task, and it just makes everyone angry. So the right answer is just to allow free speech. All right. So that's today's episode. I hope you enjoyed, and those are my thoughts on free speech.